Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Hebrew for Fun and Profit. I get to the point where I don't want to count them anymore. Coming to you from his hometown, again, in Queens, New York. Yeah, Gavriel Sanders. You know, there's a lot of stuff to remember, trust me. And it's, oh, look at that. See, a lot of things to remember. I'll say something that you'll see later. You'll find it interesting. I see a lot of green right now.
Do you?
Yes, lots and lots of green.
This kind of green?
Yeah, actually, it's the non-money type. Remember I said there's a lot to remember? Yeah, well, I forgot to turn on one of my lights. Hang on. When I don't turn on the lights,
the program gets really excited.
It doesn't set the chroma key, the green screen, the way it's supposed to. Now, for the viewers, they actually get to see what was actually on the, what it actually looks like in the studio. There's nothing but a big green curtain behind me.
and as we all know, we'll pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
There you go. There you go. Well, it's good to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
I actually used your lesson last week for my Hebrew class, which you were aware of. I actually called you in, and we were able to probe your mind for a moment. And so these classes are going to be very handy. Like I said, if not for anybody, for me specifically, because this is, and most certainly it'll be very helpful for others, for sure. This is just a wonderful...
the content that I planned for this coming week for the beginner session, which you would be using, in your home context.
Sure.
We'll probably get put off to next week, but I'll
problem.
do you a favor and send it to you early so you can use it Wednesday night. So,
that'd be nice. That'd be nice.
So,
Thursday night, right?
No, you work hard for the money, which is, I think,
Zero. Yeah, the double digit. Zero is a digit. There you go.
Very good.
That's funny. Well, it sure is good to be back. I really enjoy this series, and I can't wait to see where we're heading with it today.
Yeah, I have to just say, parenthetically, as we say in Hebrew, b'sograyim, that the response from people has been amazing. First of all, it's been a very large footprint, like a size 50 shoe.
Nice.
Because the response has been from all over. I'm hearing from people who've been through a similar journey to the one that I described to you. I'm hearing from Christians who've left the church and who are wondering and wandering. I've heard from people who are really hungry to learn Hebrew and feel like this is some kind of a battery start for them. At least They like the blend of the visual and they like the insights that we seem to be providing. And the other thing that's important to me is that people giving feedback actually helps to shape the direction and the content of what we're doing. So I look at the comments that are left on YouTube, and I look at the emails that come in, and you and I talk. So I'm just saying all that to say this to people: keep the flow of responses coming, because you really do make a difference. Excuse me, I'm going to do that thing. You want to mute me for a second?
Oh, sure. I don't mind. Go ahead. Did that get you? I get the liberty of doing that for myself all the time. Sometimes the people will hear like you talking, and there'll be a little ambient like hum in the background. That's my air conditioner, and all of a sudden the sound goes crystal clear, and I'm over in the background without the visual going, trying to clear my throat and cough and. Whatever.
Well, I didn't take advantage of drinking anything warm beforehand like you intend to do, so that's my own fault. Anyway, shall we get to what we're talking about today?
Yes, indeed. Let's go ahead. I'll turn it over to you, and I'll try to pop in a few questions from time to time.
Let me work on this. It's fine. It's best
Screen
when it's
share.
Interactive, so let me see here if I can, where that button is where I share my screen with you.
Okay.
There we go, share screens. Here we
and
go.
it's GavrielSanders.com.
That's correct.
.com.
That is correct.
Okay, Gavriel, not Gabriel, but Gavriel. Okay, perfect.
That's correct. So here we're going to start here, and then I'm going to come up here, and it's so funny. I just did this last week as well, where I messed up on the button. Oh, here it is, right there in front of me. Here we go. Okay, now you should have full screen.
Yes.
Okay, good. And it should say Program 3, July 24th, 2016, et cetera, et cetera.
Got it.
Right. So also, by the way, I should say parenthetically, speaking of dates, that today is the 18th of the month of Tammuz, the Hebrew month of Tammuz. Yesterday was the 17th of Tammuz. And anybody who knows Jewish history knows that the 17th of Tammuz is the beginning of a 3-week period going from the date of yesterday down to what's known as the Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av.
Got it.
Those 3 weeks down through Jewish history have been strangely, mysteriously, soberingly difficult. The 2 temples were destroyed within that time window, and other various catastrophes and periods of hardship have happened to the Jewish people in this time window. Because the 17th of Tammuz is normally a fast day, if it falls out on the Sabbath like it did yesterday, then it's put off to today. So today is that fast day. And then as we go down the timeline 3 weeks from now, the 9th of Av also falls out on the Sabbath, and it gets pushed off to the next day. So yesterday we were feasting when normally we would be fasting, and the same will be true on the 9th of Av. One other thing I wanted to say about that is that the number 17 in Hebrew is the numerical value or the gematria for the word tov, like boker tov,
Right.
the word for good. So 17 means good, and the letter tet, which it represents the number 9. It's the Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, right on up to tet, and that's number 9. So we have the number 17 representing tov, and the letter tet, the 9th of Av, representing the first letter of the word tov, and that, by the way, the tet appears for the first time in the Hebrew Bible 17 letters in. When we start out, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, we go, and it says that it was tov, it was good. It's the 17th letter.
Nice.
So we see that this period of time is also, this parenthesis of time is also enclosed with ultimately what will be good. So anyway, that's just a freebie here as we're starting out.
Awesome.
Today, I wanted to tell you just a couple things are on the lineup. First, we'll do our feature of sage advice, the saying of the week, and then I want to spend some time with you and everyone else on the phenomenon of parallelism in the Hebrew Bible. This week and next week, we're going to be talking about a couple of things related to literary style that I think, as we say in the old country, hold on to your strymel, to your top hat, because it's really quite fascinating. And when people have asked me, well, what was one of the major contributors to your decision to join the Jewish people? I often say Hebrew, but beneath all that is some of the things we'll be looking at here in terms of the actual structure that's discernible in the Hebrew Bible. So, but first, let's take a look at some sage advice for this week, also taken from the Ethics of the Fathers, Pirkei Avot. And would you like to hazard taking a look at that and seeing if you can read your way through that one, please?
Yes, of course. I would love to. Let me look up a little close here. Okay. Ben Zoma Omer Ezehu. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Ezehu Hacham. Wait, is that like Chachma? Is that the same word?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's related.
Okay, this is a really tough word to say, by the way.
Yes.
Halomed Michal Adam.
Right. Oh, you got like a 99.5 on that.
Oh, great.
So that's very good. Okay. So let's walk through this together. Ben Zoma Omer. This is the name of a person. We don't know his first name. He's called Ben Zoma, the son of Zoma, says, Ezehu. This is a question word, actually. There are different question words in the Hebrew Bible and in modern Hebrew. Ezehu, which means who is, Chacham. That's a hard one to say because you have to gargle with milk twice. Chacham, Ezu Chacham. You were thinking of the word Chochmah, which means wisdom. This is a wise person, okay? So, Ezehu Chacham, who is wise? Ha-lomed mikol Adam. The one who, this is the one, it's kind of inferred, Ha-lomed, the learner, or the learns from me, kol, all, Adam, person. The word Adam comes from this, but also it means, and for example, when we see in the book of Ezekiel, son of man, it's Ben Adam. So this, look at the vocabulary here. We just kind of went through that, but you can go through it again here.
Okay.
You can see it down here. And for those of you that, by the way, want a copy of this, I PDF these PowerPoints after the programming, and then if you want a copy of the PDF, then you're just welcome to write to me at gavrielsanders@gmail.com, and there's the first jet going over by JFK right now. So once again, here's the translation of it. Ben Zoma says, who is wise, the one who learns from every person. And if you wanted to be able to sound it out phonetically, on the right there it is, Ben Zoma Omer Ezehu Chacham Halomed Mikol Adam. Now I want to talk a little bit about some points of pronunciation in here just to help people a little bit. Let's focus on this word right here, chacham. It's a natural question to ask, why do we have two letters that sound the same? This is a chet and this is a chaf. Now you notice, compare this right here and this one right here. This is a kaf, k, like a letter K, and this is a chaf. So when the dot is taken out of it, that dot is called a dagesh, it's for emphasis. And without it, it's generally ch, and they sound the same. Well, the truth is, I was going to say Arabic. Hebrew is a Semitic language, and of course it's been spoken in different parts of the world, Europe, etc., where the phonology of where the people are speaking the language might be Polish or whatever, may not accommodate the original pronunciation of this. So I happen to have lived 2.5 years in Saudi Arabia, and I learned a lot of Arabic, and I can say a pretty good original of what this letter is. The letter chet is really het.
Like
it's very difficult to say it. And to distinguish between this letter, which is hey, and het, and chaf, it can be difficult unless you either grow up with it or you hear it a lot and you're around it. So in the meantime, for right now, these in Israeli Hebrew, modern Hebrew, these are pronounced pretty much the same.
The way I teach the students that we have here, the difference on the pronunciation of those is the het. I mean the hey is just like the letter H, just like
yes,
how are you, Harry, Henry, hopscotch, whatever. And then the letter het is pronounced like if you could imagine a cat hissing at you. Without the gargling, just a hiss, a really tight closed esophagus with your tongue shoved in the back of your throat like a hissing cat. And then, of course, the one you gargle with mouthwash. The one called.
Okay, well, there it is. Ben Zoma Omer, Ezeu Chacham, Halomed Mikol Adam. Now, Ben Zoma in Pirkei Avot, in the 4th chapter, the first Mishnah there, if you want to look that up, anybody, you'll find 4 very profound statements that he says. It happens to be I used those 4 statements in a paper that I wrote this week. I finished my very tough kind of collegiate journalistic level Hebrew course in the city, and one of my assignments was to write a paper in Hebrew, typed, on racism and how to uproot it. And so I actually wove in some of the wisdom that comes from this particular source, this Mishnah, to explain that. And can you imagine for yourself, if your baseline philosophy, view of life, operating principle is that you are one of those who learns from every person. So if your attitude is, in this, even if somebody's difficult, what can I learn from this person right now? And it's very hard to be racist or negatively disposed against someone from whom you're seeking to learn. And that's one of 4 major ideas that Ben Zoma brings out that are radically different than the way the rest of the world does things. So we who's a wise person? Well, a guy that's got photographic memory or that has an IQ of 180. Mm-hmm. But that's not the Jewish way. The Jewish way is someone who's humble and open and really willing to learn from anyone. So that's it. Let's move on from sage advice to. Oh, by the way, here is the handwritten form of it.
Nice.
So if you're interested in knowing how to do that, and you want this slide, please just let me know.
Perfect.
Now today we're going to talk about a literary concept in the Hebrew Bible that's all over the place, but it's not so obvious unless you know what to look for. And when I was in the 8th grade, one of my science teachers assigned our class to go out on this starry night and to look for Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, and Polaris, the North Star, which is like up this way. And then also the Orion, which you can sometimes see in the southern sky, especially with the belt that's here. And since that time, and you'll forgive the double negative here, I can't not see those patterns in the night sky. I go out,
right.
I look, you can't not see them.
Right.
And so to an untrained eye, they are, as we say in Hebrew, nirim ach lo nirim, visible but not visible. Once imprinted on the mind, they're there forever. Would you agree?
Yep.
So what's true of the night sky is also true of Tanakh. There are recurring literary patterns which to an uninformed reader are hidden in plain sight. But once a pattern is identified, and it's suddenly obvious throughout the sacred text. This intriguing genre of biblical poetry is known as Hakbalah, parallelism. Now, without the vowel points, we might misread this word as ha-Kabbalah, and these two words actually have a shared common root, but they're very distinct in meaning and context. Kabbalah, or Kabbalah, some people pronounce it Kabbalah, literally means receiving, such as Kabbalat Shabbat, receiving or welcoming the Sabbath. It's also a word that's applied to some of the more esoteric side of Jewish thought. But we're talking here today about Hakbalah. And this word Hakbalah is, here's anybody that hates grammar. I don't. I kind of like it. But this is a gerund, and you think, is that something that I had in a cage and I fed nuts to? You know, that's a gerbil. Okay, this is a gerund, a verbal noun, derived from the hifil verb, makbil. I say, oh my gosh, this is already more than I can stand. Don't worry, relax. It simply means parallel, like in parallel lines. So we have here the railroad tracks, okay, or things that are similar in comparison or coexistent, like in quantum theory posits the notion of parallel universes. That's what we mean by parallelism. As a literary form, Hakbalah is the poetry of Tanakh. It's most common in the wisdom books. You know, the word Tanakh that we say is an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, right? And so it's in the Ketuvim section that we particularly find this phenomenon of Hakbalah. Tehillim, Psalms, Mishlei, Proverbs, Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, Shira, Shirim, Song of Songs. It also occurs frequently throughout Navi, the prophets, and even in the 5 books of the Torah. We're going to give you an example of that in Genesis very shortly, coming right up. So the ancient Hebrew poetry that we speak of as Hakbalah is very different from any English poetry that you've ever learned. Like, you know, whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. Robert Frost, or who also said, good wall. Was it good fences make good neighbors? Nothing like that. No sonnets from Shakespeare. And if any of you ever studied any contemporary Hebrew poetry like Shai Agnon or Yehuda Amichai, it's far, far removed from that sort of thing. It's characterized by at least 3 basic expressions. And so why is there a Scandinavian Airlines plane here? Because you see on the tail, SAS. And that's how we'll remember the 3 types of parallelism. There's one called synonymous, there's another called antithetical, and the third one is known as synthetic. Synonymous, antithetical, and synthetic. So let's look at a few quick examples to illuminate them for us. Synonymous parallelism is really a rhyming of ideas, a repetition or a rhyming of ideas. The second phrase complements the first by expressing the same idea in different yet similar words. For example, every Sunday morning near the end of Shacharit, which is the morning prayer that we, you know, as Jews go to synagogue, as I do 3 times a day, we have Shacharit, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, or Arvit is the second word for it. We recite these words from Tehillim 24:1, Psalm 24:1, which says, La Hashem. It actually uses the tetragrammaton there, but I use in this situation, and we'll have a session where we talk about the sensitivities of the divine name, but La Hashem ha'aretz umloa tevel v'yoshveva. To Hashem is the earth and its fullness, the world and those who dwell in it. And so what we see here is we have an A-B structure happening. The second phrase is a synonymous restatement of the first phrase. Well, how does that look? Well, at the bottom of your screen, you can see over here, the earth, ha'aretz, umloa, its fullness. That's the B part, A, B. And then it's restated down here, tevel, the world. This word can also mean for, the universe, and we go back. V'yoshveva, those who dwell in it. So those who dwell in it corresponds to umloa, and the world, tevel, corresponds to ha'aretz. That is so common. Once your eyes are open to this, if you are someone who frequently reads the Psalms and the Proverbs, it'll be popping off the pages at you. So another example of synonymous parallelism is one that happens early in Genesis chapter 4, verse 23. It says, Vayomer lemech benashav, ada v'tzila, shma'an koli, neshe lemech, hazena imrati. What's that mean? And Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zilha, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. So the synonymous parallelism here is very easy to identify. So let's bring it up. And here we have an A1 and a B1, an A2 and a B2. Ada and Silha, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. Very obvious. This corresponds to this, and this corresponds to this. Is that pretty clear?
Yes, that's making sense.
Okay, and that's all over the place, and that's synonymous parallelism, the first of the three that we're talking about.
Okay.
Then there's antithetical parallelism. The second form is one in which the second phrase contrasts with the first phrase. These are especially popular in the book of Proverbs, and we'll look at an example here. Mishle 14, or Proverbs 14, has 35 verses. I went through and counted. 26 of them are forms of antithetical parallelism. Let's just look at one example here. So it says, Gam l're'ehu yisna rash ve'ohavei ashir rabim. A poor person is hated even by his neighbor, but many are the friends of the rich. And of course you can see this word here gives us the contrast. So a poor person is hated even by his neighbor, but many are the friends of the rich. The second phrase contrasts with the first. So now that you have a label for this, look for it in your own study of the scriptures. It is really quite pervasive. And then the third form of Hakbala is synthetic parallelism. It's a bit more subtle, less obvious than the first two. Think of it as a synthesis, a completion of meaning from the two statements combined. It results in a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. It also is all over the place, but you have to know what to look for. So Mishle 21, Proverbs chapter 21, has several examples of this type. We'll just look at one right now. 21:25 reads these words, Ta'avat atzel tamitenu, ki me'anu yadav la'asot, which means the desire of the slothful person will kill him because his hands refuse to labor. It actually uses the word la'asot, to do.
Right.
So the key in recognizing synthetic parallelism is often, it's similar to what we saw in antithetical. Antithetical will have a word like but, however, one of those contrasted words that's a key to you. Here we have one that gives us a reason, because. So there's a series of words that fall into these, they're known as milot kishur or milot chibur, connecting words, and those are often the key to that. So as you learn those give you the awareness that you're dealing with synthetic parallelism. Now, here we see that the second phrase provides more information to substantiate and elucidate the first phrase. So you go back and you look, as I said, at chapter 21 of Mishle, and you'll see several that are there. Now, what really blew my mind one day when I was just happened to be doing some comparative study, and I came across a situation in Isaiah chapter 40, very well-known passage, that has all three forms in three consecutive verses. In other words, 40 verse 3 is synonymous. 40 verse 4 is antithetical. 40 verse 5 is synthetic. Amazing. Wow. So let's take a look at this. And this is a very familiar one. A voice crying out, in the wilderness, clear a way for Hashem. In the desert, straighten a way for our God. Now, is the synonymous parallelism very obvious to you as you look at it?
No, I'm trying to follow you along in the Hebrew over here too, and I'm looking for it, and I don't see. Let's see, kol koreh.
Okay, kol koreh.
Okay,
that's where you should stop. Bamidbar, and he goes. I didn't put the Hebrew here on the screen because it's just easier and faster to see.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
in
fine.
English.
I wonder if I can pull that up because actually I have access to pulling that up here too. Let me just do that real fast.
All right. Shall I continue?
Yes, please do. I'm just glad.
Right. So here you see it in chapter 40, verse 3 of Isaiah, a voice crying out. And by the way, it's amazing. The King James, the New King James, and a few other translations still mistranslate. It's not that they mistranslate. They get the punctuation incorrect on here. They'll say a voice crying out in the wilderness, which they attribute then in Matthew 3, I think it is, to John the Baptist. And then it starts, clear a way for Hashem, and that's not how this parallelism starts out. The correct translation of the in the correct pronunciation, but I can't even say it. Punctuation, there we go. A voice crying out, in the wilderness clear a way for Hashem, in the desert straighten a way for God. That parallelism is clear as the desert sky at night.
Okay.
Now on to the antithetical one, which says, every valley will be lifted up, every mountain and hill will be made low, the rugged shall be made level, the ridges, which is the mountain ranges, become a vale, or like a valley. Again, the contrast very clear there. I lifted this right out of the Hebrew. This is my translation.
Okay.
And then it's synthesized in verse 5 of chapter 40. And the glory of Hashem will be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of Hashem has spoken. Now, it's not perchance that I made this purple and this one purple. And we're going to talk about that in the coming week, where you see something that starts out at the top and then refers back to it at the bottom of a series of thoughts. And that is, by the way, let me just do this. We'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay.
This is just a comparison of the first verse there, 40 verse 3, with Matthew 3:3, so you can see how it's misplaced.
Okay.
Okay, the Hebrew version, and what Jews read very clearly because of knowing about parallelism, is like this. But if you're not clear about parallelism, which seems pretty clear to me that the translators on the King James Bible didn't get this one right, at least this one, they started out a voice of one calling in the wilderness. So does it make a difference ultimately in the understanding of the verse? I think absolutely so. So that's a different subject, and you've got Rabbi Skoback, and you've got Rabbi Singer, and others, Rabbi Federo, to discuss those things. But I like to bring it out when it's pretty obvious like this, and certainly it is very obvious here.
Right, very good call.
Next week, we're going to go a little further on this, and we're going to look at the subject of the mystery of what's called chiasms in Tanakh. That's actually a Greek word, and we'll look at that a little bit. And in chiasms, you have a system like A, B, C, B, A, which is what I illustrated to you, where we had those terms in purple that correspond to each other, kind of like the bookends of a series of thoughts. And this, just like parallelism is all over the Hebrew Bible, chiasms are also all over the Hebrew Bible.
Nice.
There are even whole books, like the book of Esther, the book of Jonah, Ruth, that the whole book is built on a chiastic structure. So I think you're somewhat familiar with this, right?
Very good. I have seen that pattern before.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So these are amazing things that once you've got a little bit of enlightenment on this, then these things like the night sky where you see the Big Dipper or the Belt of Orion, these things just are kind of there and so visible to you. But if someone doesn't have an ear to hear and an eye to see,
Sure.
then they're going to miss it and misinterpret it. So if you have any interest in connecting with me, the easiest way is just to send me an email. It goes to my phone as well as to my computer. So I appreciate that very much. Any comment or thought? Now, let me just say one last thing. I'm sorry, and then I'll be quiet.
Oh, you're fine.
We will come back next week with trying to get my
Screen share off.
screen share off here as we rush to do that as the music here comes on.
Yeah, I got another show starting in 10 minutes.
Okay, well, we stop the screen sharing here. Okay.
Hey, you're good. You're good. Very nice.
All right, thank you very much.
So, no, you were going to say next week?
I was just going to say that I did work on beginning content material, which starts with where we were last week and goes further. We just kind of ran out of time here today to put that together in this program.
Sure.
I will prepare it so you can use it, God willing, for Wednesday night, and we'll have it for next week for those. And I suggest people go back. And really the one thing that people could work on is to learn to read. And I did mention in the first program how to do that. And you can go back to 30 minutes into that first program, and it's one of the first things that we talk about, just a reference back to that. Okay, that's it from me, from Queens, New York. This is your brother, Gavriel Sanders, wishing you kol tuv, u'v'atzlacha rabah, all the best and much success.
Nice. Shavua tov, l'hitro. Shalom, shalom, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye.